All right, so this is my nice to see you on. This is the second part of the interview. And how are you doing?
I am doing really well. I've got a screen in front of your face. Um, I don't really know how. Oh yes, I've got it. Okay,
You got it?
there's
Yeah.
it's gone now. I actually when I went to join the meeting,
Yeah.
my phone suddenly told me, you have to update this version of Zoom to
Probably.
continue the meeting. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Every so often you need to update it. So during the 90s, there was a big revival, worldwide revival of Celtic music, if you will. What do you think that happened? Do you think it had to do anything with global connection of spirituality or what?
No,
No,
I
no.
think there were there were some things that sort of happened around that time
Hmm.
in in music and in media. Um, the Clannad uh, had done the soundtrack for a TV. Um, was it a movie or I think it might have been a series, but it was called Harry's Game, and they had done the soundtrack for it, and it became this. It just became a real hit in the UK, and then also, you know, we had the river dance
Oh yeah, yeah,
phenomenon,
yeah.
you know, which just suddenly it was like everybody was like, you know, into the whole Celtic sound and the dancing that went with it and the visuals that went with it. And yeah, I I don't I didn't sort of think there was any great kind of, it wasn't a spiritual awakening. I think there were just some um media opportunities that came along for this sound, and because it was so different, um you know, people just like all of a sudden, advertising was, you know, playing the Celtic sound, and uh Enya's sound became really popular because, you know, it was that sort of ethereal um sound that just was totally unique. Didn't sound like anything else that was kind of in the mainstream of like pop music, rock music. And I think the combination of this sort of Celtic melodic sound with the rock um, aspect, you know, bringing in kind of drums and bass and making a sort of a band out of it. It yeah, it just took off, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it was like, and I think it was partly, it was just the originality of it. It didn't sound like anything else,
Yeah.
um, but there was still something accessible about it. You know, it was an ethnic sound, but and even though a lot of the early Clannad music was sung in Gaelic, um, it had a melodic aspect to it that was kind of quite accessible, you know, in a way that, for example, Eastern music um, is much more kind of niche. I think the Celtic sound just appealed globally because you had so many people who had roots in the Celtic nations, you know, who had gone all over the world. Like you had, you know, Irish immigrants that went to America and New Zealand, Australia, And so lots of people in all these English-speaking countries had this Celtic connection. And so I think that, you know, there was an audience there for it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a big. I used to live in Boston, and I went to school there, and used to be a big Irish community. A lot of, you know, and then River Dance was popular, and we saw a lot of advertising and kind of stuff, so it became popular maybe in that sense. And
yeah, I mean the whole east coast of the States.
Yeah.
You have these Irish communities in those eastern cities.
Yeah. A big Irish community there. And of course U2 was very important. So, you know,
yeah, U2, yeah.
Yeah, you know,
absolutely.
They did well in their life, and they were touring all over the world. Feel free to tell us about the involvement with in the Alpha and Omega album with Adrian Snell. There was one particular song, I don't know if you remember, called Child of Darkness.
Yes. Well, I remember that one because I sang it.
Of course.
I recorded it, and that was the first time that I met Dave Bainbridge.
Wow, yeah.
Because I went to his home.
Yeah.
He was living near Leeds, the city of Leeds at the time.
Yeah.
And he I think I kind of remember, like, on the top floor of this terrace house, I think there was like 3 floors, and right up in what was the attic, he had set up a vocal mic, and it was my first experience of recording anything for an album. It's first time. So wow. Yeah, that was my first proper recording.
Good for you. And you met David Fitzgerald at the same time, or not? That was
not at the same time. No, I didn't meet Dave Fitzgerald until the premiere, the sort of opening performance of Alpha and Omega in London.
Oh, I got you.
So it was I think there were 2 shows in the Hammersmith Odeon in London.
Very nice venue.
And and I was invited to go over and sing, and also Adrian Snell said you can sing a couple of your songs as a sort of an opening set. So yeah, that's when I met Dave Fitzgerald. He was playing in Adrian's band. Yep. And as was Dave Bainbridge. So yeah, that was I'm trying to remember what year. I think I was married at the time, so possibly 1980, late 80s.
Yeah,
I think late 80s.
Good for you. You composed the song Iona the days after that you received the proposal to be part of the band. How was the proposal to begin with? I mean, David saw you know, singing, and then Fitzgerald as well, and they say, well, this young lady has a nice voice and we like her music. And
yeah, well, there was about a 3-year gap.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Between the Alpha and Omega tour and the 2 Daves getting together and making this kind of connection with Iona and deciding to form a band.
Yeah.
And initially it was just the two of them. So they'd written some instrumental music, and they had performed the instrumentals a few times, but they just thought it'd be great if we had a singer, you know. I think they wanted somebody to do the talking.
Yeah.
And also to, you know, write some songs. So so yeah, it was after like about 3 year
In between.
in between when we didn't contact each other at all. They were busy. They were doing quite a bit of touring with Adrian Snell.
Yeah.
And also doing other session type work as well. So so really their contact was quite out of the blue for me, you know.
Really?
I wasn't kind of thinking I really want to be in a band. I was at the time I was recovering from an illness that forced me to stop work. My job at the time was a junior doctor, working in a hospital. So I was kind of I wasn't working, but I wasn't working because I was recovering from illness. So, but I was thinking, you know, I don't really want to be a career doctor. I just didn't really know what my next step would be. I kind of, you know, being off work gave me a lot of time to think about, you know, what I was going to do with the rest of my life. And I was already married at that stage, so that probably made it an easier decision, you know, to go down the music road and you know, hang up the white coat and the stethoscope and and say goodbye to my medical life. Yeah.
So you end up. So they phone you and you got together and you say, yeah, why not? And then is that correct that you went home and the day after or the same night you end up writing that Iona song? Is that
well,
correct?
no. There's
Mortal
the initial contact from Dave, Dave and I'll say Dave and David, so that you know, as the two people.
Yep.
The initial contact with them was around. It was in the spring, and they had both been to the island of Iona and to Lindisfarne, and they had been very inspired by it, and they were writing music. And they contacted me in the spring, and they said, we've kind of have an idea that we, you know, we'd like to form a band. We would call it Iona, and you know, we'd love to have a vocalist, and we think you have the right sound of voice, and we love that you know, actually play piano, you write songs, and you have that melodic, you have that Celtic melodic sound. So I wasn't initially enthusiastic, if I'm honest. Really? Because I thought these guys are like serious professional musicians, and I'm a singer-songwriter with no formal music training. And this band, you know, they play instrumental music, and what am I going to do when they're playing instrumental music? You know, I'm going to have to learn keyboard parts with really difficult chords, and I just don't think that's my thing, because I'm not at that stage. I had no knowledge of progressive rock music. I mean, I'd heard of Genesis and Yes and Pink Floyd, but you know, I wasn't an avid fan. I didn't listen to that kind of music, and I was much more into, you know, singer-songwriter type music. So I just thought this is so different from what I imagined I would do if I was going to do music. So yeah, I actually had to think about it for a few months, and then I went on a camping holiday with my husband. So we're in our mid-20s,
Yeah.
and we were 5 weeks with backpack and tents in America. And
Oh, wow. Good for
and
you.
and when we came home from that trip, so I think we were coming home in like middle of the summer, and we had been away for 6 weeks. We came back to our apartment and we opened the door, and there's like a pile of mail on the floor behind the door. And the first thing I picked up was a postcard from the island of Iona. And I think it was David Fitzgerald had written the postcard. And just asking, had I, was I still thinking about being part of the band. And I literally straight after this, coming into our apartment, finding this postcard, I threw my backpack on the floor. I lay down on the sofa. I was so tired, and I fell asleep, and I dreamt about being on this island. Now, I had just looked at a postcard with pictures of Iona on it. So, how our minds, when we sleep, we dream, very often we're processing things. And it was like a lucid dream. So I actually felt like I was in the dream, and I was on the island, and I could feel the long grass, and then then suddenly I was like flying above the island, and I was looking down on the island. So it was a very vivid dream. And I'm not into interpreting dreams or thinking they have great spiritual significance. I don't go down that road with dreams. A lot of time dreams are because you ate a certain type of food with lots of MSG in it, or you've been through something traumatic and you are processing it, or you've been thinking about something, and then when you sleep you dream about it. So I don't think I don't attribute great significance to the fact that I had this dream, but it did inspire me to write a song when I woke up. And I went to the piano, and I very quickly just wrote this song about the dream. And I just called it Iona. And then the next day, or maybe a couple of days, I wrote another song, and that became The Island. So I was thinking then at this stage, I haven't written any songs for a long time, and suddenly something captures my imagination and inspires me. And I thought, well, maybe this is what I should do. I can't think of any good reasons not to do it. And when I prayed about it, and I talked to my husband about it, I started to feel excited about it, and just think this could be amazing, because I am getting the opportunity to be in a band with these incredible musicians. They're in a different league from me in terms of musicianship,
Yeah.
But I can do something that they can't do.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. Of course.
And so yeah, I recorded the songs on my cassette recorder and I sent it to Dave, and I was kind of like I wasn't convinced they would think the songs were great. I still didn't know really. I was kind of waiting to see what their response would be. But at the same time, I was starting to feel kind of like, this could be great. And I was getting lots of support from Steve, because he had heard the music that they had written, and he was like, these guys are amazing musicians too. You're not going to find musicians like this, in Northern Ireland to form a band with. And you can still write your own songs,
Sure.
but really, once I committed to being part of Iona, that became my writing focus. I wasn't thinking, oh well, I want to do a solo album as well, and so I keep writing songs. I really didn't. I didn't think about doing anything like a solo project for a long time. I mean, the first one was Looking into Light. That was 1999. So yeah, it was just
So,
all Iona.
so yeah. So at the time, right? Of course, we didn't have phones and internet didn't exist, and we have phones at home. So you end up phoning the guy, or you end up taping the two songs in a cassette recorder and send it there
I
without
taped,
even
yeah,
saying yes or no to begin with.
I taped initially it was phone calls,
Yeah.
and I posted the cassette.
Well, yeah.
And do you know what I'm trying to think? We didn't have email then.
No,
I'm
of
not.
course not. No, of course
No.
not. You could have email.
So
Phones at
yeah,
home.
it must just have been like we had phone calls, and
Yeah.
then I sent the two songs, and that was it was early enough in the summer for us to play them at Greenbelt Festival, which was at the end of August.
I got it. Yeah.
So from I sent the two songs to when we actually got together in England wasn't very long. It was less than 2 months. So it was
So
phone calls, and
so
then
they received the cassette, they listen, and they maybe say, man, this young lady, she's pretty good. All right, she's
yeah,
in
he just liked this. He liked the songs.
for you.
He liked the structure of the songs, and especially I think with the island,
Yeah.
where I played this kind of piano motif. It went dun 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 dun, and I kind of repeated this, and I think it just it inspired Dave to in terms of how to arrange the song.
Yeah.
And yeah, so of course at that stage there was no drummer, so Dave was programming everything. He was programming the rhythm and bass. So when we played at the Greenbelt Festival, we were just playing on the fringe. So it was just the three of us, and Dave was using sequenced keyboard and bass and rhythm. And then David Fitzgerald was, on flutes and saxophone, and I played keyboard. and sang. So, you know, that was 1989.
Wow. I wondered if somebody ended up recording the kind of stuff with a, we didn't have cell phone, but with a tape or something. It would be good to. No,
I
probably.
don't know, but you know,
I
my
need to
husband Steve
update.
and I
Huh?
sat last night. We went on YouTube on our big TV,
Yeah.
and we started to find all these all these old clips that people had uploaded to YouTube
Yeah.
that were things that Iona had done for BBC television programs, and people had obviously just recorded it, you know, with a video recorder and then uploaded it to YouTube. The quality was, you know, when you put it on a big screen, the quality was terrible. But there was some really early stuff there.
Wow. I need
You
to
know?
check it out.
Yeah, there we did a program that BBC ran, and it was called Roots and Rhythms.
Yeah.
And the Roots was I think it was Routes. So it was just about different they were kind of journeying through the British Isles and um making the connection with the music of different areas. And they did a program on the island of Lindisfarne, and of course at that stage we had brought out it must have been Journey into the Morn, because that was the album that had Lindisfarne on it. But we ended up filming. They filmed an open air concert in the castle ruins, or in the monastery ruins on Lindisfarne. There are ruins from the old, like an old abbey that was there, and so they filmed us playing, and there was an audience in the grounds of the ruins, and they did some little bits of interview with us. So I was finding these on YouTube, and we were laughing. You know, we all look so young. But yeah, there's all sorts of stuff on there.
I need to check it out, man. I need to check it out. And then when Terrell Bryan, the drummer, came into the band, a long time after that, or
No, initially, um, we played the Greenbelt Festival, and then we went to the Netherlands to play at a conference, and we connected with Frank Van Essen. So right at the beginning, and I remember we did a documentary. I think it was maybe with EO Television, like a Netherlands company, but we were on the island of Mull, and Frank was with us, and we did some filming there, and we did bits of interview. But Frank was still living in the Netherlands, and we were starting to book some gigs in the UK. And if Frank was working at the time, and he just wasn't available to do all the gigs. So we did a few gigs with an English drummer. I can't remember who it was.
okay.
But it was only like 2 or 3 gigs, and then we connected with Turl at that stage. So by the time we were, you know, recording the Book of Kells album, Turl was in the band, and then Turl was in the band then for about 9 years. And then Frank, because we did an anniversary concert in the Royal Festival Hall in London, which was when we recorded Woven Chord. And that was after like a bit of a gap of a couple of years. And that was the sort of the transition from Turl as the drummer to Frank as the drummer. So it was like our first gig with Frank was Royal Festival Hall being recorded with an orchestra. Wow. So yeah, it was definitely in at the deep end. For everybody. And of course that time we had Nick Beggs. He was playing Chapman's stick.
Yeah, I know who he is.
Yeah. And but Phil Barker was playing bass. So at the Woven Chord concert, because it was like an anniversary concert, we had Nick Beggs came to play, and I think we had Dave Fitzgerald. So it was just a kind of like a kickstart of the next phase really of Iona, as myself, Dave Bainbridge, Turl Bryant, Phil Barker, and Troy Donackley. And so that was pretty much the lineup for 15 years.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And you guys were doing, I imagine, financially well. You were traveling a lot, doing a lot of gigs, and
no, not really.
But were you?
We didn't tour extensively.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
We didn't tour extensively because I did not want to be on the road all the time. I love home. I like being with my husband and with my animals, and having time to be creative and write songs. So we didn't ever really tour. I think the longest tour we ever did was 3 weeks, and that was in America.
I see. Wow.
The rest of the time, you know, it would have been maybe a week, 10 days when we would have gone to Europe, and maybe we would have done maybe 8 or 9 gigs. Germany, Holland, yeah. UK, like I think a few times we were in Switzerland, and also just tying in with some festivals. You know, if there was a festival somewhere and we got the opportunity to play, then we would have tried to get a few gigs around the same time. But it was expensive. It was expensive for us to go on tour because logistically we all lived in different countries, so the travel expenses were high, and also we had a lot of gear. You know, like Dave's setup was pretty extensive, yeah. And Frank's drum setup was also pretty extensive. So, you know, we had quite a lot of backline, and let's just say we weren't making enough money to afford to have roadies with us. So we set up our own gear and we packed it down, and you know, a lot of tours we didn't even have a driver. You know, we were just driving ourselves, so it wasn't very glamorous.
Yeah. Were you happy at the time?
Yes, we had great fun on those tours. Yeah, we really did. And Troy was always very entertaining guy to have on tour, because he was really good at card tricks. I mean, he was so good that he eventually he ended up in the Magic Circle. He got acceptance to Magic Circle, but his his sleight of hand and his card tricks were professional. Let's just say they were professional.
Yeah.
So we had a lot of fun with that. Yeah, and Nick Beggs was also he did a few tours with us. He was the bass player in Beyond These Shores during that era.
Yeah.
And then by the time we were into Journey into the Morn, we had Tim Harris playing bass, but not for an extended period, because he was also Steel Ice Band. So yeah, he was a busy guy.
Good. How was the creative process like? You guys, you would write the lyrics, the singing, and bring it to them, or was a process where everybody was in the same room and contributed? What do you think about this? What do you think about that? Or
in the early years of Iona, really, for like the first 4 albums particularly, the writing was pretty much, I was the songwriter.
yeah.
So I would have just written a song, chords, melody, lyrics, and Dave and the guys, and especially Frank and Troy, very creative guys, they were writing instrumentals. And sometimes a song that I'd written would just sort of spark the imagination for Dave to extend that into like an epic instrumental. Like, an example of that sort of thing would be, there's a track called White Horse,
Yeah.
on Another Realm, and that just started off as a song. But Dave then kind of extended it and wrote these instrumental passages, and then we brought in another little bit of vocal work. So sometimes Dave would write instrumental music and would have like a vocal melody section, and I would have to come up with some lyrics, or Dave might say, there's an instrumental section here, but I think this next section, that could be a song melody. So I found that more difficult, whenever I had to either write lyrics to a specific melody,
yeah,
or I had to come up with a melody and lyrics over a particular chord progression. So, but that was, that was kind of how a lot of writing was done. There were in the later albums, there were times when we got together to have a writing session. So we would just get together, and Dave had some ideas, or Frank had some rhythm idea, and we would jam a bit, and we would record things and develop some of the songs, develop that way. But the majority of the sort of straightforward songs, let's say, I was the main writer of the songs.
Yeah.
And in the early first 2 albums, there was a kind of quite a clear demarcation between instrumental tracks and songs. And I was the songwriter, Dave Bainbridge, Dave Fitzgerald were writing the music, the instrumental pieces. I mean, I never composed an instrumental piece in Iona. I was only ever writing the song melodies. And there are a few tracks where Dave had a melody that he thought I should sing, so I learned it and I tried to get lyrics to work with it and fit in. There were a few times we used lyrics from other sources, like some poetry sources, where we had permission to use those lyrics. Yeah, so it was kind of just it was a bit of a mixture of everything.
And it was there.
It's a great.
Yeah, go ahead. No, sorry, go ahead.
There was a great kind of creative chemistry. With each different version of the band in terms of the musicians that were in it, there was always a really kind of creative gel when we did get together. And sometimes we got together to rehearse for something, and we'd end up, coming up with a great rhythm idea, and then chord progressions, and melody's my thing. If you give me a rhythm track and just a chord progression, I'll just come up with melodies. I mean, they might be okay, or they might be great, but that's my sweet spot. It's just like creating melodies.
Good for you. Was there like a clear vision for the band? Okay, we would like to, in 3 years from now be here, in 5 years from now be there, and so on and so forth, or you guys were?
No, I think the vision was more about the creativity, and it, like there was usually a theme. The first album was kind of our discovery of this kind of Celtic heritage that we had, that was part of the history of our faith. And then the Book of Kells was very thematic as an album, because it was a discovery of, the Book of Kells. These were illustrated manuscripts of the 4 Gospels. So that was a theme. And then the next album, Beyond These Shores, the theme that kind of inspired that was, the stories about St. Brendan. And so, these Celtic Christians were very missional. So their journeys to go out into the unknown, they didn't know where, they didn't have maps to show them where they were going to get to.
That's right.
It was like these journeys of faith. They had this message, that they were compelled to take to other peoples, and they didn't always know where they were going to find people or land. But that Brendan's Beyond These Shores was kind of that whole album has a theme, and Dave loved themes. He liked a concept album, and maybe that was a little bit the Adrian Snell kind of early influence, but Dave really liked to have a not just an album of random songs,
like a good concept for a particular album, right?
But a concept, that took the listener on a journey from the beginning of the album to the end. So there was that kind of creative vision. but in terms of career vision, that wasn't really our thing. Maybe if we'd had a manager who had that kind of vision, things could have been different. But we just wrote the music that we loved to write, and didn't really think about whether it was going to be commercially successful.
Oh no, you were the only lady with all these guys. Didn't they drive you crazy sometimes, or you, for the most part, you guys got along well?
Yeah, for the most part, we got on great. They were just like a family. I think because I had always had siblings.
Yeah.
And I was a little bit of a tomboy through my teens.
Yeah.
So more of my friends were guys when I was a teenager. I had like this one girlfriend, and the two of us kind of, our little group was, us two girls and about five guys, and we were like hanging out together, riding bicycles together, playing tennis together, and just hanging out and enjoying the outdoors. That night, neither myself or my friend, we were not interested in boys romantically until we were about 17. So I think that it was a bit like just hanging out with the guys again, and I think I'm a pretty easygoing person. I'm not. I'm not. I don't like confrontation, and I'm kind of like, well, whatever keeps everybody happy. I'm not going to fight over what seat I get in the bus or what room I get in the hotel. Yeah, no, we when I think back, we really did go on very well. Which is why I think probably, it lasted as long as it did.
Yeah, many years. I mean, what, like 20 years or something, right? So, some people, they don't get along very well, and they split up, and like marriage, sometimes things don't work out for one reason or another. But in your case, but because you guys have the same sort of, the same country or Christian upbringing, and maybe there was the reason that you guys get along very well, and I was just curious. And you did an album. You worked with Robert Fripp in the album Beyond These Shores and the Journey to Morn.
Yes, I never met him.
What do you mean? How you, Robert Fripp?
I never met him. That connection was really Dave Bainbridge's connection.
Yeah.
I think maybe through Nick Beggs.
Oh, I got it. Yeah.
So I that was all kind of Dave's creative department. So people just say, "Oh, you had Fripp on your album, playing your album," and I went, "Yeah, we did," but I never got to meet him. Yeah.
Dave, I mean, Robert Fripp is a kind of famous guitarist as well, and with King Crimson, so he's kind of well known, and maybe you like progressive music, that kind of stuff. So, but sometimes nowadays people don't meet, right? Hey, can you help me with some lyrics, or in this particular section, they send you their stuff, you put your lyrics, somebody glue it together, and hey, I never met the guy, I just happened to help him out with them a couple of tracks and stuff like that. Go ahead.
But yeah, I mean, when I think back, like, to the way we functioned, we would work on an album, and then we'd get the album recorded, and then we would plan some gigs. But you know, every gig was always, we were always playing the favorites, you know, from the previous albums.
Yeah,
We didn't go out, we didn't go out and just play the new songs. We always played, you know, the kind of Iona classics. So we had a few tracks from every album at most concerts. And we could have not seen each other for 3 months and then get together to go and play a gig, or like maybe 3 or 4 gigs, and we haven't played together or rehearsed for months, but we would like literally just go, meet up, set up, and
really?
and our sound check would be our rehearsal.
Wow,
you know,
that's crazy.
because I lived in Ireland. Dave, Phil, Turl lived in England. And then later we had Frank in the Netherlands. I'm in Ireland. The others are in England. So like we weren't like kind of getting together every week, you know. And yeah, it was, we went months, we could go months, and during that time we were just all doing other things. Like we weren't talking on the phone or any of that stuff. We would just all go and do our own thing, and then a few months later it was time for a few more gigs. So
maybe
that was
maybe that probably is one of the reasons that you lasted that long, because you guys didn't see one another, so you couldn't fight that much.
well, I mean, I suppose a lot of bands, like they go on tour for months.
Oh yeah.
And they you know, they're maybe doing like 150, 200 gigs in a year, you know, whereas we might have done 20.
20 in a year, right? Yeah.
You know, I mean, we did, you know, the 3 weeks. I remember the time we went to the States for 3 weeks, and I think we literally only had about 3 days off. It's like, you know, we did quite a lot of gigs in a short space of time, lots of long drives.
Yeah, I mean, if you decided to do whatever that many gigs, try to do one after another. Bands do like 3 days, 1 day off, 4 days, 1 day off. Well, it depended on the distance, but just to get it over. Plus, it's cheaper that way. You know, you don't have to take time off, stay in a hotel, and then drive somewhere. So you try to do it in a more efficient way.
I think the drive to be efficient was more to do with the fact that I didn't want to be away from home for any longer than was necessary. And so we ended up, we didn't really have that many days off on tour to just do fun things. And it was usually our day off was the day that we had a 10-hour drive.
All right, from one town to another. You guys did 2 excellent albums, Open Sky and the Circle Hour. And feel free to elaborate and, you know, how special those albums were for you guys and so forth.
Well, you know, it's funny, if I was gonna pick the albums that were kind of most special for me, do you know, it's probably the earlier ones.
Really? Yeah.
Like Beyond These Shores, Journey into the Morn. You know, I just had some songs in that album we just really enjoyed playing live. And Open Sky, Circling Hour, I think, was the album that we played the least number of tracks of the Circling Hour live. And I think it was probably the album that we collaborated more so So and it's funny, it's the one album that I would really be scratching my head to remember the songs that are on it.
I'm not going to ask you the word.
Yeah.
And then you have, I think at the time you have your two songs, I think, right? Where you end up have the idea of lullaby project. I think it's called what, Raphael Journey or something like that.
Raphael's Journey, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, it's funny. It started out as an idea to do a lullabies project.
Yeah.
And at the time, I had two little boys. You know, they were like about 2 and 3 years old.
Yeah.
And by that stage of parenting, I kind of thought, you know, it's adults that need the lullabies, not the children.
I know what you mean.
So it sort of became more of in my mind, the concept was lullabies for grown-ups.
Yeah.
So I just wanted it to be like a really kind of relaxing, gentle kind of collection of songs, but to still have the kind of that Iona sound about it, which, you know, with Frank producing the album,
yeah,
and I think everybody who was in the band at the time, you know, play something on the album. Yeah, it was a fun one to do. It was lovely because I went to Frank's house in the Netherlands a few times, and got to stay with him and his wife, and it was a very kind of relaxed album to do. There was no deadline. It was like, you know, there was no pressure to get it finished for any particular time.
Yeah.
We had a bit of a rush, because the tour that we went on to America wasn't long after I'd finished recording it and Frank had finished mastering it, but we hadn't actually manufactured any CDs. And suddenly it was like, we're going to the States and I really should get this on CD, and take some with us. So I remember Frank and I sitting with his laptop in a services station on a motorway in England, because we had a breakdown with our van. We were doing some UK dates at the time, and we had to wait for like about 2 hours at a service station. So Frank and I sat with the laptop, and Frank just pulled up an image, and, you know, we did some graphics, and I was like, yeah, that's fine, that's great. You know, it was like, I think probably the quickest ever album cover design.
Yeah, good.
But yeah, and I still have hundreds of Raphael's Journey CDs in boxes in my house.
Really?
Yes, hundreds. I mean, I have the Map Project, the first one. I can't find any more CDs. So I've either lost some, or I actually have sold them all. And I only manufactured 500 of the Map Project number 2. So I have some of those left. Uncountable Stars, I have hundreds of those still. You know, it's like, back then I kind of thought I might sell 2,000 or 3,000 CDs, but that was a bit unrealistic. And now very few people buy CDs. So
yeah, well, I do. Well, I do buy a lot of vinyl, honestly. So when I visit you one day in your home, I will get to your basement and then get one of these.
Yeah, and do you know what? Do you know what I also have here?
Yeah.
I have all the 2-inch tape reels of the early Iona albums.
Really?
Yes, they're all in boxes in one of my outbuildings where the piano is. Yeah.
Oh, how can I get out of your hands?
Because and I think it was part of a deal with the record company, because I think that we were chasing up royalty payments from the States for quite a long time, and I think eventually there was just it was just part of the, the trade-off. We'll give you can have the reels, so we own them. But
Yeah. Yeah, some band instead of paying royalty, they say, okay, here's your material, then we are even, we're gonna leave it and
yeah,
go on with our life right now. Yeah.
so
Oh, I would
yeah,
love
so somebody could remaster for vinyl.
David Bainbridge never have no any interest in doing that kind of stuff or no?
I don't know. I think it's like everything. I mean, Dave really was the instigator to do the 30-year box set.
Correct, yeah.
Dave put in all the work really to accumulate all the material, and like all the old tape recordings that we had from writing sessions and unreleased material. he cleaned it up, got it cleaned up and mastered for CD. But no, we have all that tape
Yeah.
that could you, if somebody had the time and the resources and the desire to do a vinyl, special edition vinyl Iona classics, it could be done.
I will talk to when I see Cambridge next weekend. Probably I will mention that to him. I don't know. He knows that
Yeah.
you have the thing. Maybe he doesn't know.
Oh, yeah. It was like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they're still here. I don't remember them ever being retrieved.
Yeah.
But I think it was just a storage issue. It was like,
Yeah.
Dave didn't have
Okay.
space to store all this gear. I think they were brought over one of the times that the band came to Ireland, and we had a couple of writing sessions here in Ireland.
Yeah.
So and Dave came over with a van and all his gear. So I can't remember how they came over. But they definitely were piled up in a room in our property for years. I don't know. My husband Steve might have moved them to somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, they're if they're still here, they have been in a very stable environment. They're not
That's
going to
good.
be
Yeah.
they're not going to be ruined. They're going to still be in good condition.
Collecting dust.
Yeah, no, they're all in boxes.
Yeah. Oh, I'm interested in seeing them. You end up in 208. You end up recording releasing an album called Personal.
Yes, I did.
Yep. And feel free to. What was the meaning of that album? Why you call it personal? Or
Personal. I called it personal because at the time it was I think it was quite a defining time in my life in terms of my faith, my beliefs, and kind of becoming a little bit disillusioned with organized religion, and perceiving that, you know, a lot of what I saw seemed so impersonal, in terms of, you know, people who seem to just go through the motions, or they just did stuff because, you know, that's the way they always did it. But it was more of a kind of a intellectual form of faith, as opposed to it being real heart, you know. And so I think, you know, I was just writing songs at a piano, and I knew they weren't Iona songs, because there wasn't a concept or a theme. It wasn't Celtic. It was just, I think when I'm processing things, or going through changes in my life, you know, either personally, relationally, spiritually, it's like it's kind of how I process things a bit. I sit at the piano and I write a song, and I've written lots of songs that nobody will ever hear. But those ones, I thought I'll share these songs, because I'd meet people who we would have conversations, and they were saying things to me that resonated with how I was feeling, and the ideas that I was expressing. So yeah, I mean, and I'm not good with like titles for things. So I actually think it was suggested to me because one of the songs was called Personal, and I think it was the A&R guy who was in Kingsway Music at the time, who was a friend of mine. I think it was his suggestion, and I'll just call it Personal. So I think that's what happened.
Yeah.
And you know, again, it was one of those albums which I didn't really do out of a kind of a any solo ambition that I had. It was an opportunity to record the album. You know, my friend said, you know, I could get a budget for you to do this, and you know, why don't you come out to Nashville and, you know, just record the songs live. You know, I mean, great musicians out there. So you know, it was just like, let's go to Nashville for a week. And Turl Bryant came with me, because I felt a little bit intimidated by, you know, all these really great musicians in Nashville, and I thought, I'm going to feel like totally out of my depth. I want a friend. So Turl came along, and also I knew, in terms of the dynamics of the song, that Turl would get the song, and that whatever kind of feel and dynamics that he came up with, that it would be right for the song. Whereas if I just had gone over to Nashville to get a session drummer from Nashville, and somebody that I didn't know, somebody that didn't know my songwriting style, that it could all have been very different.
Yeah. I'm glad that it worked out well. I mean, it's
yeah, but you know, I actually, I don't think I even have a copy of that album on CD.
really, no, you didn't make
No, we did make CDs, but
it was more.
but I just got a small like quota of CDs for complimentary CDs to give to people.
Yeah.
And at the end of, well, I mean, a few years later, they decided to, you know, take the album off the catalogue and just kind of shelve it. And then their surplus stock ended up in a storeroom. And then that label was kind of becoming something else. And they contacted me and said, you know, would you be interested in buying, you know, 1,000 CDs? And I was just like, well, what would I do with them? And actually, at the time, there was over another thing that had happened where they, one of their artists had taken a song of Raphael's Journey and had recorded an album of lullabies, and had used had that song that I'd written became the title track of the album. And I was never asked for permission for someone else to record the song. I didn't ever get paid anything from the publishing of the song. So I kind of said, look, I think you owe me. Why don't you just, you're going to dump the CDs. Just give me a few hundred CDs, you know, and we'll call it even.
All right. Yeah.
But it didn't happen. So I don't know. I don't think there are too many of them in circulation.
If I go to your house one day, I will go to the basement and start looking in boxes.
You won't find any boxes of personal. Definitely not.
Maybe on eBay or one of those sites, and they're gonna be, you know, they're gonna.
Yeah, I think though. I mean, I could get hold of one, and I think what I'll do, I'll just put it up on Bandcamp or release it.
Yeah, Bandcamp.
Release it on digital platforms.
Yeah.
You know. I don't think I'll get into any bother if I do that. Yeah. I don't think anybody's going to come after me.
Yeah, Bandcamp, you know, it's an excellent way for musicians to sell their music. They only take about 10%, and it's very fair, you know. And
yeah, I mean, the music I've put up on my Bandcamp site, it's set up in such a way that people can pay what they want.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So if they want to download it and pay $1, they can. I just, you know, I'd rather people, you know, can have the music and than really try and make money from it now. You know.
Yeah, but I mind that people because many times they will say name your price, you know, and I try to be fair. I would say, I don't know, $10 or whatever the cost of the CD would be, because I would feel.
Yeah, I think, you know, it sort of balances out, because you have people who really value your music, and they will pay way more than, you know, a normal price.
Right.
Because they want to support what you do.
Right,
so that kind of balances out, you know, the folk that, you know, will maybe only pay $1 or $5 for something. So I don't really pay too much attention to what's happening on my Bandcamp site. Yeah.
But eventually they deposit or send you a check, or they deposit into your account. I don't know how that works. A little bit of money, and
well, it's linked to it's linked to my PayPal, I think.
Yeah.
So if someone downloads something, I think you can order the CDs from the Bandcamp.
Yeah, I need to check it out.
Shop as well. But yeah, it'll come through as a notification on my mail. That somebody's downloaded an album and what they paid for it.
I really like I don't have that many questions left. I like the album that you did with Moya and Margaret and worship together. That's some years ago.
Yeah,
And
that was
very interesting.
21 years ago.
Yeah, it's I really like the album.
Yeah, that was the first album of what they called the New Irish Hymns.
Yeah.
And since that album, the hymn writer Keith Getty, he's he moved over to Nashville with his wife about 16, 17 years ago now. I'm not sure how many years ago, but that he has done amazingly well with that whole concept of writing modern hymns.
Yeah.
And with the Celtic connection. Yeah, so that has really become pretty huge in the evangelical world. I mean, some of those hymns they are sung all around the world, globally, in churches. So yeah, he's done very well, and he was actually awarded the OBE by the Queen.
Really?
I think the first person ever to be awarded an OBE for their contribution to church music. So yeah, it's quite something. So they have I mean they have a lot of material online. They have a great YouTube channel. They put out lyric videos and some actual visual videos, and they have really incredible musicians. They put on events with orchestra, choir, the Grand Ole Opera House in Nashville, and what's the other really prestigious venue in New York? Oh, I can't remember the name, but yeah. So yes, it all started with the very first connection was a young hymn writer in his early 20s who thought somebody is bound to be able to combine Celtic melodies with hymns, like with the doxology of the Christian faith. And at that time he was familiar with Iona's music, and he was like, well, there's somebody who's singing these kind of melodies and expressing their faith in the songs. And so he came to me and said, would you listen to this song? Could you give me some feedback on the melody? And I think he was about 21 years old. Oh. And he sat down at my piano and he played this melody, and I sang. I said, that's a great melody. I said, like, I've only heard you play that once, and I feel like I could sing it already.
Wow.
And that first melody that he played for me became it's probably the biggest hymn that they've had in the 15 years, 20 years history. And it was a hymn called In Christ Alone, and it's sung all over the world. It's been translated into I don't know how many languages, and the first recorded version of it is on that album with Moya Brennan and Maggie Becker and myself.
That's very impressive, man.
Yeah. So
you got
my
royalties?
son,
I hope you got royalties out of that, right?
no,
Oh, don't tell me you did.
no, just I think it was probably a flat fee at the time. But it's funny because one of my sons told me recently, he said, when you Google, when you do YouTube, your name on Spotify, he said, it comes up this hymn, like it's got like millions of listens.
Yeah. Cool.
So yeah. No, it's just I just love that I was part of the inception of something, and
Yeah.
and I love it. I love that it's done so well.
It's not I mean, in my opinion, Joanne, it's not just the money. It's the fairness that I complain about Spotify and many like that. The artists. I don't know. I think they get paid 1 divided by 400, so 0.0025 or 0.3 or whatever cents per each stream of the song.
Yeah.
I,
I mean, from streaming, I would say unless you're streaming in the millions of listens,
yeah,
you're not going to be making any money from digital streaming.
Yeah.
Which is why I think so many artists are out touring. Because that's where they'll make some money, touring and selling merchandise.
Correct. Yeah.
Because the student population, the young adult professionals, they're not buying CDs and albums. It's just everything's just downloaded, and that's just the way it's gone. Artists are having to try and reinvent ways of connecting with an audience. And
the band X will make an album that costs them $40,000 to make the album, and they're recovering their investment by selling T-shirts or autograph picture, or a key change or whatever on a venue. So they a T-shirt that will cost them probably $1 to make, they sell it a venue for $25, and that's what they make the money of to record the investment on the album, right? So so you end up recording an album to end up selling T-shirt or
I mean, and
whatever people do.
I mean, I just I make music now. I record music now because I love to do it. I love to write songs, and I love the process of them being recorded and then hearing an arrangement of the song. But realistically, it's my most expensive hobby.
Yeah.
Now, because I know, even when I made manufactured CDs, I still have not recouped production costs on any of the recent solo albums.
Like the Map Project 1 and 2?
Map Project, Uncountable Stars.
Yeah, Uncountable Stars, yeah.
No, none of them.
What?
Maybe if I could, if I started doing some like small private concerts.
Why don't you?
Yeah, I might make. Although I have been asked to record another song for the Japanese composer who composed the Xenogears songs.
Who is Sakamoto? Ryuichi Sakamoto? No.
Yeah. Yasunori.
Yasunori. Okay. No.
Yasunori, yeah. So I did the vocal tracks on the Xenogears.
Yeah.
So that is like they had the 20-year anniversary concerts in Japan in 2019 or 2018.
Yeah.
So they're producing a new game. So I have been asked to record the soundtrack song, and I will actually get paid quite well for it. So
good for you.
That's I will let's just say what I get paid to record that one song will fund my next recording project.
Yeah.
So
So, a good deal, right?
yeah.
But you will have to go to Japan. You will do it at home
No,
and
no, no.
then
I'll
the stuff.
be recorded here. Be recorded here.